We're just waiting for them to get the video started.
Waiting for
Good. Good morning and welcome to the regular board meeting for Tuolumne Utilities District, Tuesday, October 24th. Director Ringen, would you lead us in the pledge to the flag, please?
certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, public forum. We'd like to welcome the members of the public who have taken the time to attend this meeting and provide comments on matters related to district business. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This need not be related to any item on the agenda. However, the board cannot act on an item unless it was noticed on the agenda. Persons speaking during public comment will be limited to 5 minutes, or depending on the number of persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board. Are there any members of the public who'd like to address the board? Seeing none, how about the coming in via Zoom there, Corey? Okay. Okay. We'll go ahead and close public forum and we'll move on to the consent calendar. Melissa?
Okay, item number 1, minutes of the regular board meeting of October 10th, 2023. Item number 2, investment report as of September 30th, 2023.
Anybody have any additions or deletions or changes to anything on the consent calendar? Director Ringen.
I'd like to pull the number 2, the investment report.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. I didn't read through that whole thing like I've done once or twice before. I did peruse it. I'm wondering why we're doing this. This was a Kent Johnson, Grinnell, Sarno, Mayfield deal that got instituted, and I'm a firm believer in having something that is, you know, financial backup, if you want to call it that. But I don't think that thing's well, first of all, with Jerome Powell and his gang of morons raising interest rates like they are, and the out of control spending of Trump and Biden, I think this country is headed for a really rocky road in the near future. If it's not going to be a real recession, it could even be a depression if we're not careful. I think this thing should be cashed out and the money put into the projects that need to be done here at TUD. I mean, we've got tons of stuff that needs to be done that's falling apart. Why are we putting money aside into this thing when it's not really making any money that I can see?
Director Balin?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't we supposed to save for reserve so that we look grant worthy? And maybe I'm talking about the wrong thing, but
Director Balin.
you know,
Mic.
we need to.
Oh, yeah, turn your mic on. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Anyway, I won't say any more. I'll let Steve explain what we're doing.
Good morning, Steve Sheffield, your finance director. And Director Ringer brings up several different issues. Historically, this district, first of all, didn't have any cash, didn't have any reserves. When I got here, everything had been spent down to that. And so one of the things we did was to institute a strong budget policy and a budget, and to try to institute some procedures to get us back to square one instead of increasing debt, reduce debt, control expenses. And then with the 2015 rate increase to get back to a point where we could start establishing some reserves. Reserves are necessary, especially for governmental agencies. But again, given our financial situation, it's very difficult to be so. One small correction to what Director Ringen said, this actually came about with General Manager Ed Pattison. I argued pretty fervently when those directors you mentioned came on board with the four of them that we still need to get our financial ship in order before we need to start changing those things. And how would we go about that? You know, at that time, the question was, we didn't have a reserve policy. Well, how can we have a reserve policy when we don't have any reserves? So we shifted that year, got to the point, started putting money away for reserves. The reserves are designed to, one, be able to qualify for certain grants. Two, it's important to show the federal government and the state that we have the ability to repay any of these loans that we may take on and get there. And essentially the cash, we don't have a bunch of excess cash. We have cash that is being used for operations as well as the CIP project as they come along. So along comes General Manager Pattison, who said, and historically, this district, this board wanted essentially zero risk. You know, the stock market and everything else with that, and investment plans are designed on risk reward. There's legal requirements, what you can and can't do as far as a governmental agency, what type of investments you can do. But essentially, first and foremost is the security of the investment. Next would be the liquidity of the investment. And then you get into the yield of the investment. So historically, we've always participated in LAIF, Local Agency Investment Fund, held by the state of California. We continue to do so. You can see on here, over half of our cash is still held with LAIF. Back in the golden days, 20, 30 years ago, the investment earnings from that were sizable based on the monies we had with them and everything else. Well, COVID kind of put everything on its ear. You know, we went down to, I think at the lowest, it was like 0.06% earnings on that money. Along comes General Manager Pattison, had a different viewpoint. We should be investing for the future. These reserves should be established. They should be held. We need a plan. We need an investment advisor. So at his direction, we prepared an investment policy. We went out and interviewed investment advisors, came back to the board. We selected an investment advisor. I think our investment advisors are outstanding, but when we went into that, it was a 5-year plan. The first year we're coming out of COVID, we've been with them 2 years now, going on 3. The first year coming out of COVID, see what it did to the economy, the market, everything else stood on its ear. The plan was to put $5 million in the first year, another $5 million in the next year, and see what happens. It's a 5-year plan. We're about 2.5 years through the plan. We still are not earning more than what we are in LAIF. They're about break even as that. LAIF has been going down, but as the bond market continues to change, that's what's affecting that. The earnings over here as we invest in are going up. So each investment we make today into this CAM is going to earn more money and be worth more down the road. As it says in the report, it is softening. Inflation continues to run higher than they'd like, but it's going the right direction, if you will. What's going to happen after the next election? Who knows in here? But again, as we reported 3 months ago, you know, it's still a matter of staying the course in here. We are not putting any additional funds into here. Any funds that are coming in now are being maintained in LAIF, and we use that for both operations as well as projects. We can do transfers on a daily basis. We can put money in today, we can take money out today with LAIF and still be earning right now, I believe it's about 3.75%. Last quarter, it generated $100,000, I believe, in interest earnings. So we have a very diversified portfolio, which the investment advisor and myself feels very important in these uncertain times. We have decided for the last 2 years to not put any additional funds in this Chandler. Per our investment policy, we're bringing this to you each quarter, saying we're complying fully with state law. Here are the results and everything else. But it's still, when we went into this, it was a 5-year outcome on here. I argued a lot of years that if this board wants no risk and do that, then we should have stayed with LAIF, but we had a general manager who felt very strongly that we were missing out by doing that way. I disagreed with him at the time. That's where we went. We probably lost some investment earnings over the past 2 years, but I really think it was unforetold. And we have the opportunity to more than make those up in the next 2.5 years. Stand course. If you'd like anything further from our investment advisor, he's always available to us and we can do that. But again, we're not putting any additional money into this. We're waiting and seeing. These funds are here. And even with these funds, we still have a negative reserve in the water fund. Sewer fund is back to breaking even or a little bit positive as far as the fund balance, but water isn't. We expect that to be corrected. If you remember back when those board members were here, we had $11 million deficit between water and sewer. Now we're about, with this last audit, about $2 million deficit. So we've made that up through a variety of these things. And with the rate increase and with the planned CIP that we have, we should be back to even by the end of this year, I would expect. So Director Ringen, I don't know if that helps explain it in here. I think you're right. It's important that we not put additional funds into this. We haven't taken any funds out because we have the funds in LAIF and we've been using those. But, the financial health of this district, we absolutely need reserves. And that's what this is really designed to provide us, right now. We don't need the money right now. We have the sufficient funds in LAIF to fund operations, especially with the rate change that we just put in place. So happy to answer any follow-up questions.
Well, I appreciate the explanation. I get real frustrated when I see how much infrastructure needs work and we don't have the money to get a lot of that done. I mean, we're doing is I'm amazed at how much is getting accomplished, to be really honest, but it just more would be better. Let's put it that way.
Sure. Any other comments? Director Bailey?
I really appreciate you explaining it. Thanks. That was real clear.
Director Boatright?
Steve, with the state actually mandating changes in wages for different industries, i.e. the medical and fast food, is that going to continue to drive this investment portfolio at a sluggish rate? Or is it going to impact it to balance out? To me, it seems like the changes on state policy are going to drive inflation back up, at least in this local economy.
Right. I think you're correct in that it definitely has an effect on the factors we see here on the market. I'm old school. I'm not the guy who believes in buying and selling stocks all the time. I like to be much more conservative. I don't want to put our ratepayers' funds at risk. And we are controlled by, the state of California has said there's only certain things a governmental agency can invest in. And part of this report here does verify that we've complied with that. Our portfolio here, and again, I'm not the investment expert. We can have him here if we need to, but our portfolio, in my opinion, is driven much more by the US Treasury and bond rates. And those are not so directly tied to the labor market. Of course, they're affected by it. Right now, he talks about we're still kind of in an inversion, okay, where it's kind of backwards in what it historically is, because, the interest rates are coming up here, but the bond and CD rates are staying low, and they want to kind of turn that around. You reduce inflation and you bring these bond rates back up. In the meantime, the stock market has stayed strong. Now, we don't have any of the traditional type stock market investments that you'd see. So I don't think this portfolio is driven by much of that. And what he has done is steadily over the last 2.5 years, increased what we're reinvesting in and our return. It started off at 0.5 and now we're getting, 5% returns on some of these ones that are getting right now. I think that will continue. They were expecting to not have another rate increase. Now they're saying they're going to have another rate increase, but the stuff that's driven by the wage rates and some of the other state things, I don't think will really have an impact on this plan as far as what it is. And, in December, we're going to bring back the investment policy to this board. And that would be the time our advisor will be here with us and advise us of any required changes to our investment policy. But that's the thing. And the big thing when we went into this is I very specifically told them that what we didn't want was to tie up our funds if we needed them. If we have a big project comes along, we want access to these funds. So almost all of our funds are 2 years or less liquidity. So, that's something that, just like Director Ringen said, if we get to the point where we really need to start going on some of these more expensive projects, that we have access to the funds. But direct answer to you, I don't think this portfolio is going to be much impacted other than like the world is.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that explanation. Okay. Weldon, do you have anything else on item number 2? Yeah. All right, then I'll entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
I'll make that motion to accept the consent calendar.
Okay.
I would second that motion.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
4-0.
4-0, sorry, yes. Yeah, Director Jacobs is at a California Special Districts Association function today, and that's why he's absent. Okay, Melissa, number 3.
Okay, number 3, financial reports for first quarter ending September 30th, 2023.
Mr. Steve.
Good morning. Steve Sheffield, Finance Director. So, according to our accounting policy, a financial report comparing budget to actual and containing income and balance sheet shall be prepared, delivered to and reviewed with the board of directors on a quarterly basis. As most of the boards heard me say before, close down so I can see my notes, which suggest to you. Your microphone's good. Oh, thank you. All right, let me get this over here. All right. This board's heard me say before as well, when we do these budget analysis on a quarterly basis, the two less meaningful or not as important, I guess, they're all important, don't take me wrong there, but this first 3 months, we just adopted the budget. We're 3 months in. You wouldn't expect there to be any significant changes, anything we need to fix, do, or whatever, unlike the last time when we approved the change to the CIP. So this, from an operational standpoint, you just don't expect a lot, and there isn't a lot to show. I just have a couple slides for you. The other one's at the end of the year. You know, obviously, if we're looking at the last 3 months, there's not a lot we can do about it. It's end of the year and the audit's coming. So as far as this one, I just have a few slides for the board. The first one is a summary, all combined, water and sewer together, combined revenues. And what it's showing is for the first 3 months, I should say the setup as we've done before. The first column is the total budget for the whole year that was adopted. And it's important to note the utility billing is before the rate increase. So rather than change it just to match revenues, as we go throughout the year, we should see those additional funds coming into that. But what we budgeted was before the rate increase was adopted. The next column called fiscal activity is the 3 months year to date. And then the variance between that grand total for the 12 months versus that. And the final column should be this percent remaining, which if everything was received exactly equal throughout the year, you would expect it to be 75% remaining. So if we look down the list, you can see, you know, utility billing by far and away, the majority of our revenue, 73% is remaining. So we've received just a little bit more than we budgeted if you did it equally. And then property taxes is a timing issue when the county pays us on there. So there's always a difference. And then the remaining ones you can see are kind of within that same. So the total grand total revenue is 73% remaining. So consistent, on track with as budgeted, nothing really out of the norm there. The next slide is the combined expenses, and total combined expenses so far were $4,400,000. Same setup as far as the columns there. Looking down the list, you can see the biggest difference would be personnel, which is always different because the CIP labor, where we're using our own labor, there's about, you'll see on the next slide, 325,000 so far. So that's the reason for the larger difference there. And we still have some unfilled positions, so you expect that. The rest of them you can see are kind of right around that 75% marker on there. And so pretty consistent. And then it's been, I can't remember, 2 or 3 now where we decided or proposed, I know this is hard to see, hopefully it's better on your screens. Also, it's in your packet, but this is just a CIP status report that we're doing with the quarterlies as well. So the way this is set up, on the far left are the budgeted projects. Now, those are sorted alphabetically just because that's how we do it internally here. In the past, I have sorted them different for the board, but you know, 3 months in, this is the new adopted CIP budget. So those first 3 columns, the budget is the 8.3 million. There haven't been any transfers or reclassifications yet. And then the middle columns, it's there in blue, is the amount that's been spent so far for the 3 years. So you have the non-labor or materials. That's really what the budget's designed to cover. And then there's the labor that I talked about before, the 326,000 that we've done in-house, in-force labor. So the total spent for the 3 months is almost $3 million. And then the far right column is just how we track how much of that material budget's remaining. If there's a grant one in there, like for instance, Sonora Regional, the wastewater treatment plant, that's going to show up as a negative just because that's being funded as grant or loan. The one comment I have on this slide or on CIP in general that I think is important to note is that each month we submit a claim for reimbursement on the Sonora Regional. It's been averaging anywhere from $1 to $2 million a month so far. This one we got here, so we're drawing it out of the construction loan that we took out. This month was the first one where we crossed over that amount and we have submitted for the grant reimbursement. I don't remember, I think it was like 270,000, 300,000 or whatever, but it's significant to us because we've been waiting up till now. USDA, you know, when do we get our money and how are we going to do that? We had to spend our money first. then the construction loan, and we did it. And so far, our contact with USDA has been, this is great, we're on track. We submitted it just this week, and she said it should be 3 to 4 business days before it's placed directly into our account. So going forward with this, as we spend the money on that project, it'll be coming out of that $8.5 million federal grant that we have. Then when the project's all wrapped up, the USDA will pay off the construction loan, and we'll start our 40-year loan with USDA at the interest rate, either as we set up or if it's lower. Right now, we don't know, but and get that set up. So I just wanted to point that out. I know Eric and Eric aren't here. Don probably knows the status of any projects that are underway. If there's any questions on this one slide, but we're on track as far as the operating budget. We're on track as far as now we got the new CIP and those sort of things. And then I know we have another meeting Thursday, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I've got one question for you.
Sure.
That interest rate on that USDA loan, that was sub 2%, if I remember correctly. And that's not subject to rate. It's not adjustable.
It's the lower of that or the one at the time the project's done. So
yeah, well,
I don't expect it to be lower, but we
yeah,
got that one locked in.
yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to be sure we're still getting that extremely good interest rate on that
Yeah.
loan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Director Ringen.
So, Steve, on the warehouse expansion building, you've got yellow highlighted transfer needed. Where's that transfer gonna come from? The money?
So that transfer need in yellow highlight is kind of our internal thing that we do each month. We update this schedule every month in here to track. The approach is made that the board has adopted the overall budget. The board has adopted the total CIP budget, this 8.5 million. So as we go along, what happened with the warehouse expansion is that we were pushing like crazy to get it done by June 30th. We had that rain when we poured the concrete. We had some parts not show up, the doors. So there was a little bit of overrun. So it wasn't totally finished at June 30th. So we had to do that. So in this case, it ended up being, $6,000 over the total. I don't remember the total cost of the warehouse. I think it was 180,000, something like that last year. So what happens here is when we get to this thing, we have to look at all the other projects here. And the idea is hopefully we have some room in one of these other projects where it's either been delayed or we know it costs less, than we planned on or whatever else. But typically this will go to Eric Hall and engineering, and they will review it and say, okay, we're going to fund that $6,000 out of SCADA upgrades because we're not going to do that this year. We're waiting for that, or the SCADA upgrades are coming out of operations, whatever, for us to stay within that total budget. If we were all of a sudden to say, hey, we got this new project, it's going to be $500,000, we would be coming back to the board to ask the board to increase the total budget. So I know we had this discussion last time with the CIP. From our perspective, when we manage the budgeting for CIP, we're not looking for the board to authorize or approve individual projects. We feel that's our job to prioritize and bring to the board. Here's what really needs to be done to keep our water and sewer flowing. But as long as, from a financial standpoint, as long as we stay within that $8.5 million and we can take that out of somewhere else, then we're still within budget. If we have, hey, there's nowhere to take that $6,000, we're going to do everything else, we would be coming to the board to say, board, we need an additional $6,000. So right now we have not identified. I think that's why they're both in yellow, is because their thought was to do that. But typically Travis, my accountant, and myself will finalize that with Eric Hall and Eric Johnson. And then next month you'll see in that budget transfer column that doesn't show anything right now, we'll show you where we took that out of. But rarely does it take a project off the list, if that makes sense. A lot of these projects are expected to be more than a year. Could be 2 years, could be 3 years. So the timing of it is subject to that. And some of this stuff we still just can't get. You know, it's very challenging to still get parts and materials. So. is that-
Okay, thank you for that.
Certainly.
Any other questions for Steve? Okay. Is that it for that there, Steve? Okay, and this is a accept and file this report. So I will accept a first and a second.
I move that we accept this report.
Okay,
I'll second it.
all right, it's been moved and seconded to accept and file this report. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 5-0. Oh, sorry, 4-0 again. And I apologize, I skipped over public comment. Is there any public comment? None here. How about on the web? None there. Okay. All right, passes 4-0. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa, for keeping me straight. Okay, next order of business, Melissa.
Okay, item number 4, update on district operations for September 2023.
Okay, that's me
Mr.
again. I'm standing in for Eric Hall. He's and Eric Johnson are down at regional. There's an awful lot of work going on down there. Exciting stuff. So we're turning on pumps, moving water, exercise and new equipment. So they got a little bit of a SCADA deployment as well. So they're kind of all hands on deck down there. So it's me for the ops report. I'll go through what I feel like are interesting and informative pieces, and I'll open it up for questions. So on the raw water division, of course, there's a lot of work. This is September, so a lot of work in preparation for the annual ditch outage, which we just had last week, and that went really well. I see that they did a lot of repair from last year's storms. So a lot of work on last year's storm work. I see that they had repaired 3 different leaks for a grand total of 280 gallons per minute. Now, those are estimates, those are eyeballs. There's not a year on those leaks, but that's somebody's eyeball looking to me. So that's good work there. Water supply obviously is really good still. Too good in some places. Not much to report on the water treatment. I see the demand was down quite a bit from last year. For September, cooler temperatures, milder temperatures may be the reasons. I'm not real sure. I see that the water department also hosted a tour from the Columbia Junior College of the Sonora Water Treatment Plant. You can see them, demonstrating a jar test. And they also installed a new pump in the well for the Comstock well leading up to the ditch outage. And that was a great success. It increased the yield back up to its original yield. I forget the numbers, but as it turns out for the ditch outage, we had a very warm ditch outage. That extra capacity of that well really helped out. We didn't see any issues, any struggles. We didn't come close to running out of water anywhere. So it's ditch outage. Let's see, distribution. What I have to note is, the Mono Village tanks, right? Those are those 3 tanks up on the hill over here. Well, as of yesterday, the 2 tanks that were taken offline are now down on the ground. They've been taken down, they'll be hauled off in the next couple of days. We have a contractor coming to do some geotech for the soils to see what kind of a foundation we can need to have to raise a brand new tank. So that's in progress, making good progress there on those 4 tanks over there. Mount Provo transmission line. I know I took Director Ringen up there a little while ago. As of September, I know it's better than this, but as far as September goes, there's over 6,000 feet of new main line. They've installed all the fire hydrants on that stretch that we saw. They also installed a few new service connections there on Mount Provo. And let's see, also Zone 4 tank. It's under construction. Actually, if you drive out there now, you'll actually see a tank. It's not coated inside or out. There's a lot of work to be done, but anyway, there looks like there's a tank there today. Construction and maintenance, you know, they've got a lot of hand in, you know, in the Mono Village, not the Mono Village tanks, but the Mount Provo and the Millville sewer lift station. So they're busy with construction projects, but they've also had the 10 to 25 leaks and repairs. So that's down from last month, but still quite high. Wastewater collections, I didn't highlight anything in particular, but I'm really impressed and proud of the work that we do. As Director Boatwright knows, you know, highly regulated nowadays since the consent decree, and the crews are still performing that maintenance really well. They do an awful lot of work each month to make sure that our sewer is in tip-top shape, and they identify any problem areas which can result into repair works done within his department, or repair work that can be done by our construction crews, and or turns into CIP projects for later. So a lot of good work there. I already mentioned I don't know if I mentioned it, but the Mill Villa sewer lift station is, just heard this morning, it's complete. With the exception of the fencing, it's complete. So if you get a chance, take a drive by the Mill Villa sewer lift station, you'll be pretty impressed. It looks pretty nice. See, that's about it. Wastewater treatment seems to be, you know, plugging along. The old plant's still doing its thing. New plant's coming online. We just have, you know, if I see anything that makes me a little nervous here, is we have too much water in quartz. You know, we had a big rainy season, a late start to the reclamation season. So we're past the normal turn off for the reclamation season, but we're communicating with the users out there, and we're extending the reclamation season as long as we can, as long as weather permits. Lastly, under employee development, safety and security, Kevin Johnson, who works under Eric Johnson, he's our inspector, but he passed his grade 2 water distribution certification. So really happy about that. That's the end of my report. If you have any questions for me.
Yeah, I got a question about those tanks over at Mono Village. So, so 2 of them are down on the ground. You're still running the one because you got to have a tank there. What's the plan for the new to be replaced with the new tank? Any idea yet on how big that tank will be?
I know I've been told, if I have to guess, I think the site is big enough for a 400,000 gallon tank, replacing 2 tanks that were 125,000 nominally. So increasing the storage there. I think that's the plan. Again, because of this location of these particular tanks, there's no redundancy upstream today. In the long range plan, as far as the tank master plans, we want to be able to have some redundancy somewhere above them, but that's years and years out. So we had to construct a tank there, a permanent tank to be there for at least 30 years. So like I said, what's left, I'll remove the tank. Some outfit will come and do some geotechnical analysis of the soil that will tell us what sort of a foundation we need to lay. And then somebody will lay the foundation with our crews or outside construction, and then the tank erectors will come on and put up the tank. I think the tank is out to bid. So
okay,
plugging on pretty good.
So just ballpark estimate when we might get that tank built and online? 6 months, 10 months, year?
Inside, sorry, Eric.
Not going to hold you to it.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
6 plus months, yeah.
Okay.
But inside a year, inside of 12 months.
Okay, good.
We need to get it's scheduled to get done during this fiscal year. So we're a quarter of the way through this fiscal year. So it'll be done this fiscal year for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's good news. Those tanks were, as we all know, very, very poor shape. So glad to see there.
Yeah, we'll share with the board and the rest of the public. Kevin Johnson, who you just heard about, also flew a drone during the demolition of those tanks. And it probably won't come out up on the sound, but we'll at least get to see the destruction, the demolition of those tanks. But those folks that were within earshot of those tanks heard those rafters come down pretty quickly, hardly getting touched those tanks, and those rafters were coming down. So it was, and we've seen several of these tanks come down. So
yeah,
we did a good job.
Good to hear that than to see the water coming down if those tanks failed. So, okay, Director Ringen, you had a comment?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to. I had a couple things, as usual, I went page by page through this ops report, and it's really well done again. But my question was, and you answered it for the most part, but it's a little vague. Courts. If we have another heavy winter, is that going to be a problem with courts? I mean,
Yeah, yes, could be potentially. It could be. We have several types of years, and then we have what we had last year, which was an anomaly. If we have a repeat of last year, we could be in some real trouble by February and March. So just this morning, I tasked Tony Diaz, who replaced Glenn, to give me a forecast of different scenarios: a dry season, a mild season, a wet season, and a season like last year. So I know today or soon here what I'm facing depending on the type of year we're having.
well, this is that El Nino thing, and they never know exactly what's going to happen, but it could be really wet. That's what I mean. Calaveras is already telling their businesses to harden up for a really rough, wet winter. And I'm hoping that courts can hold whatever it gets and not overflow, because I don't think we want that trouble.
No, well, and Director Boatwright is the supreme expert here. It can't overflow the top. It can, but we won't let it overflow the top of the dam. That would be serious trouble. The worst case scenario, we'd have to go down and release water intentionally into Woods Creek, provided we did some analysis, and you got to meet some dilution ratio, and there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of communication. So I'm getting ahead of it as much as I can.
Yeah, well, we don't want to go there.
No.
The other thing that I wanted to ask about is I was looking at the sewer collections report, and we have 5 for this year. We have 5 spills, and we're at 5, and that doesn't make me feel real good with another couple months left to go.
Again, like I said, Rich Pitcher, the superintendent of the collections department, is in charge here. That best management practice, that's a self-imposed number that we carried over from the consent decree. We just kept it to self-imposed. We're no longer under the consent decree.
Okay, great.
But we're paying attention. So what all this work and all this information and that number drives Rich to create work orders, either for some projects to be done in-house with his own crews or with our crews, or even outside construction with lining and sewer line replacement and things of that nature. So this isn't just a number that we go, yeah, there it is. No, it forces our hand to go do work. So those problem spots aren't a problem spot again.
So that leads into then my next question, and that is the Mono Village sewer lift station. When is that line going to be put in, the gravity line, and that old rundown lift station taken offline?
Mono Village, right? Right up here. Did you say Millville or Mono Village?
Okay,
yeah, you meant you said Mono Village, and it's out to bid. Is it out to bid? I think it went out to bid for construction, for bids. So it should get done this fiscal year too. I think it's an easy construction project, so it shouldn't. Once somebody gets awarded the contract, it should go pretty quick.
Good, because I know that's a problem child there, and we need to get it offline.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then too, have it be gravity instead of using power, that's gonna be good also.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, thank you, Don. Okay, moving on. Staff reports. We only got one staff here. We already heard from Steve a lot. You got any more, Steve?
Nope.
Okay. All right.
Well, I have a couple things. On Eric Johnson's behalf, I already mentioned this, but Kevin Johnson, who is our inspector now, he does a lot of things besides inspecting, drafting. He's taken on some of the drafting, but one of the nice things about Kevin Johnson, he's also, I'm not sure if he's a certified welder, but he's a welder, right? And so they're working on the Zone 4 tank, which is a welded tank. And so having his expertise up there on welding has been beneficial to the district. Just interesting to note. The other thing is Eric Johnson wanted to let us know that Thursday, he's got some staff going over to Calaveras County Water District to go visit with them and talk to them about, so over there, in some cases, if not all cases, when they have new tanks, they have elected to go with glass infused steel tanks. And that's fairly new, not really new, but I don't know, it's at least 10-year-old technology. And at first, when I heard of these things, I thought that's impractical. It doesn't work up here in the mountains. You know, a glass freezes, breaks, all that stuff. But anyway, they have lots of information over there. They've gathered that they feel like that's an improved technology that they're actually putting in place. So we have some guys and gals going over there Thursday to kind of garner some information to see how that can be fed into our tank master plan. So good stuff. And it's always good to visit with folks across the river.
What's the advantage of the glass infusion?
Coatings, internal coatings are nothing. You don't have coatings anymore.
Oh, wow.
Inside.
That's a
And
huge one. Yeah.
That's neat. If somehow, let's just, if a tree or something were to hit one of the panels and breaks the glass, that one panel can be replaced, not the whole tank. So it's just interesting. So
Interesting.
Eric Hall has, every year he meets with the county and other emergency response type people, and they're talking about the winter weather. And as a county, we're trying to, collectively make sure we have all our acts together so that we can work cooperatively if an event there's a winter like last year. So for me, my staff report really consists of last Wednesday, TUD put on a tour for the IRWM group of the regional sewer system. It's really sort of a historical kind of a look at how all the sewer systems became the way they became here in TUD or in Tuolumne County. I mean, we started out the tour here, but we cut to the middle and drove up to Twainhart. I talked about why and how and who constructed the Twainhart treatment plant. And that was in the mid 60s. And then by the early 70s with new regulations, a lot of these systems like Twainhart's were in trouble meeting their discharge requirements. So the state, and this was happening all over the country, wasn't just happening in California, certainly not just in Tuolumne County. The state and federal folks realized that we're polluting a lot of the waterways, because of these sewer systems weren't performing the way they needed to. So they also recognize that these little communities weren't going to be able to afford their own upgrades. So they were they ended up, funding a lot of these programs through grants and loans. And I'm going to cut to the chase because we don't have 3 hours here. But in any event, Twainhart and other communities really struggled. So it came about that there was going to be a regional sewer system plan, and Tuolumne County Water District number 2, one of our predecessor agencies, was going to be that lead agency. And just to kind of cut to the chase, there's a lot of hard feelings, a lot of grief, a lot of finger pointing, actual lawsuits filed against this district from some of those other districts, because I'll just use the term hostile takeover, but the word hostile, when you read all the newspaper clippings and all the stuff that I've read over the months now, I mean, takeover is used an awful lot. And having been here since the 90s and starting up in Twainhart, I garnered a lot of these what I call dots or pieces of the puzzle, but it didn't make much sense to me until recently. I started reading all these articles and reading the history. And I can see why communities like Twain Harte was upset with Tualatin and TUD, and Jamestown upset with TUD. So it was just an interesting and informative road trip up to Twain Harte and back. On our way back down, we stopped and looked at the Mono Village sewer lift station. We also stopped and looked at the new Law and Justice lift station to kind of give folks an idea of what our new standards look like today compared to the old standards that we took on way back when. And then finally, we ended up at the new regional treatment plant, where on our way down there, I went back to the 1850s and talked about all the sewer challenges that we had in the city of Sonora, and how those challenges just weren't challenges for Sonora, but they really impacted Jamestown. And that's sort of where the ill feelings from Jamestown began. It was way back in the 1800s. So anyway, it was a very interesting and informative tour. I enjoyed giving it. I got a lot out of it, just a lot of satisfaction just studying and learning. So it's a great tour. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Don. Any questions for Don? Okay. We'll move on to Director's Communications and Reports. Barbara, you want to start us off?
Sure. Let me see. Well, first of all, I want to say that Director Jacobs is down at CSDA. So I had contacted him to follow up on the ad hoc travel policy committee, and we will wait till he's back. And I'm sure he'll come away with some really good ideas and, about board protocol, because this will be rolled into our board policy also. So just letting you know that there's nothing to report there until he gets back. Let's see, on the 13th, the Mountain Counties Water Resources met Thursday evening in Jackson. We rotate our regional executive board meetings, and it gives us a good opportunity to see another district and what they manage, and look at the local flavor and get local representatives in and learn about the area. So this one just knocked my socks off, because they had put together some light bite meeting things where Dana Jorgensen comes, who's our representative. Ron,
It's Senator Alvarado Gil.
Yeah, and also there was Lauren Hernandez from Senator Alvarado's. And so then they speak on the emerging issues for us. And Lauren Hernandez from Senator Gill's spoke. Her background was Homeland Security, and she was right out there as realizing that water is part of our Homeland Security emphasis. It is something so essential for us to even be strong. So and she's young and just really lots of energy. So that was really great. But where we had this get together was in a place called Knight's Foundry, and Knight's Foundry had wrenches and this overhead drive shaft with all these belts running to everything. And we're inside next to, there's a chart on Mountain Counties next to a big pile of coke, and for like coal, right? And this is the only water powered foundry still in operation west of the Mississippi. So this thing was, they give tours one Saturday a month, but to me it represented not only it's like our ditch system is something that's still a workhorse to this day, and might even be more important as our supply lines are not so dependable, and et cetera, et cetera. So this foundry, I really encourage everybody to take a look at it, because everything in San Francisco that you see was fabricated in this foundry, and it's still in continuous use. So very, very educational, and really enjoyed Marie Alvarado's skill shop talking about emerging issues. So then the executive board meeting was the following day. It was in the Sutter Hill schoolhouse, and that was great. And so we were looking at we were discussing our November meeting, which I really hope all of you guys attend. So then I talked with Dawn about volunteering Mount Tuolumne for rotating in April of 2024, showcasing our county and our water. to host that. And so I think that may come across through with Emily and everybody. So we haven't really done that, but that's always good for memberships to see what, you know, to showcase our stuff. So then we met last week. There is a urban greening grant opportunity that I had asked Don to take a look at, and it's a webinar for projects that use state greenhouse gas mitigation funding, if I remember correctly. But the next two webinars are October 25th at 1 p.m. Was that yesterday? I don't, and today, October 26th at 9 a.m. And what is the value here is money that the state is putting out to help disadvantaged communities deal with the health and safety issues involved with greenhouse gases on our atmosphere. We have urban heat sinks, which are our schoolyards are just asphalt. And so they showed examples of places that allowed playgrounds to have trees and a water feature, you know, just little things like that to help with the children's, you know, to oxygen and sequester carbon. And so it's the greening up of communities, and they're applying this money, especially for disadvantaged communities, because we just have such a lack of parks and green connectivity. And of course, I think there's a fire safety component to this, as well as a health and safety all the way around. So that was, I thought, really valuable. And I appreciate Emily because we, you know, that gave us some good ideas to look at. And plus, it is for disadvantaged communities. You don't have to have a match. So anytime we can leverage our ratepayers' money and advances the way we want to go, I'm all in favor with that. And so with that, that's all. Oh, wait. Nope. On Thursday, we had our water committee. Thank you. I could hear the reminder, Jeff. And that was a great meeting. If anybody sat in on that, man, I really learned a lot about the difference between capacity charge and hookup fee. Did I get those right?
Yep.
Yeah, and there is a difference. And you know, given that we had a rate increase, okay, based on very important issues like chemicals, personnel costs, then how does that track? How is staff tracking that for new development to pay as well? And so I was very impressed with Antonio. And you know, yes, there are areas that we could revisit for sure. The policies that the board, or Jeff and I, the committee, made some recommendations. Melissa, thank you. You captured everything on the notes. In terms of, yes, there's things that we can spruce up and pass those costs, revisit that. And I think this will come up with the wastewater committee as well, and making sure that staff is charging appropriately as the times are changing. And one policy hadn't been updated since 2014. So, you know, we'll be updating that. So I was very pleased with the outcome. And plus I learned a lot about how your formulas are calculated. So how you do decide based on a neighborhood and the age of the tank and blah, 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 how much a hookup is in that neighborhood was phenomenal. Yeah. Yeah. We're not just doing hip shots all over not that I thought that, but it was good to see how much work had gone into these formulas to actually, so Antonio can educate a new person when they come in for a new hookup, because they want to know why all these charges. So, and I'm sure you'll add more to that meeting as well. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Director Balin. Director Boatright?
No reports at this time.
Okay, Director Reagan?
Okay, I attended that tour, the RWM tour that TUD put on. I'm not going to elaborate because Dawn did a pretty good job of explaining how it went. I'll just wanted to say that there was several staff members involved, as well as Dawn, and they all did really a fantastic job. And I think that there was a lot of people walked away from that tour really with a much better understanding of what's going on with that regional wastewater plant and all the things that lead up to it. So anyway, then on 10/19, I attended the TUD Water Committee meeting, which I did it on Zoom because it would have been a Brown Act violation if I could have been there, but I mean, I had to do it as a stone. So it was really a very, very interesting meeting, informative. Then in Saturday's newspaper, I wish we'd had notice of this prior, but on 10/28, they're going to have the free meds disposal at the Tuolumne County Library. I guess out in the parking lot or something like that. And if anybody remembers, the last thing that we want is for people to take their old meds and flush them down the toilet. It pollutes the water. I don't think that some of them can't even be treated properly at the plant, at the sewer plant. So it would have been nice if we could have gotten a word out. Maybe you can go on the website, but I doubt very many people are going to see it. But I just thought I'd mention that it's from 10/28, which is a Saturday, and it's from 10 to 2 at the Tuolumne County Library. And next thing I want to bring up is maybe it'd be kind of good. I don't know whether everybody's been paying any attention or not to the emails that have been coming in, but Brent Ives did about 5, I think, of on board conduct and that sort of thing. And I'm just wondering if maybe it isn't about time for us to have him here for a workshop, for a board workshop on just generally how a board should act and perform. So I guess that's about it for me.
Okay, thank you, Director Reagan. Yeah, the only thing I have is that water committee that Director Balin spoke of earlier, and she described it very well. The only thing I might add is that I too learned quite a bit there, and because I've been asked, not a lot, but a few times from people out in the public ratepayers wondering, why the hookup fees are so high and what's in them. And what I came away with is there is an enormous amount of calculations that go into those things. And that if you're, depending on what part of the service area you're in, it's going to be different from someone else in a different part of the area. So if you are planning to hook up to TUD, water or sewer, and you come in and you sit down with Antonio, he will go to great lengths to explain it to you, why it is what it is and what the costs are about. And he'll do so in a very respectful manner and in a very clear manner. So that was evident to me as well. I mean, he does a very good job of doing that. So I want to thank Antonio publicly about that. But other than that, that's all I have. So last chance for everybody before we adjourn. Anybody have anything else to bring before the board?
Jeff, I forgot to mention as part of my staff report, I wanted to say that Emily, put together a handout, and I just thought I'd share with the board what the handout was for my tour. So.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Seeing no further business, Want to thank everybody for coming and we'll adjourn.
Thank you all.